You think you chose who you are, the way you react under pressure, the way you treat strangers, whether you reach for connection or pull back from it, whether anxiety follows you like a shadow or barely grazes you at all. You think these things emerged from your experiences, your choices, the life you lived. But what if the most fundamental parts of who you are were already written before you took your first breath? Before you had a single experience? Before you made a single choice? That idea sounds like it should be easy to dismiss, and yet the science keeps pointing in a direction most people find deeply uncomfortable. To understand how this happened, you have to start not with psychology, but with biology, and specifically with something that happened inside your mother's body while you were still being built. You already know about DNA. You know genes play a role in who you become. But what most people don't know is that genes are only part of the story, and not even the most interesting part. What matters just as much, sometimes more, is which genes get switched on and which ones stay silent. This is the field of epigenetics, and it may be the most quietly revolutionary science of the last 50 years. Here is the key insight. Your genes are not a fixed program that runs the same way regardless of circumstances. They are more like a vast library of possible responses, and the environment, including the environment inside the womb, determines which books get pulled off the shelf. Stress hormones, nutrition, inflammation, the emotional state of the mother herself, all of these can reach through the biological barrier between parent and child and begin shaping the nervous system of a person who hasn't been born yet. McGill University researcher Michael Meaney spent years studying how early stress leaves lasting marks on the brain, and one of his most striking findings came not from humans, but from rats. Mother rats who groomed and licked their pups more frequently produced offspring who, as adults, were calmer, more curious, and better able to handle stress. Rats who received less nurturing contact produced offspring who were more anxious, more reactive, and more easily overwhelmed. The difference wasn't genetic. The mother's behavior literally changed which genes were expressed in the pup's brain, specifically in the region that controls the stress response. Now translate that to humans. A pregnant woman who is living under chronic stress, financial pressure, relationship conflict, trauma, grief, doesn't just feel those things herself. Her stress hormones cross the placenta. They reach the developing nervous system of her child. They begin calibrating that child's threat detection system before the child has ever encountered a threat. This isn't a flaw in the design. It's actually a feature, in evolutionary terms. If a mother is living in a dangerous environment, it makes sense for the child she's carrying to arrive pre-calibrated for danger. A nervous system set to high alert, quicker to detect threat, slower to relax, is better suited for survival in a hostile world. The problem is that this ancient calibration system is still running in a modern world where the threats are rarely physical, but the biological preparation for them is just as intense as ever. Developmental psychologist Jay Belsky at the University of California, Davis calls this differential susceptibility. Some people, he argues, are born with nervous systems that are highly sensitive to their environment, for better and for worse. In harsh conditions, these people struggle more. In nurturing conditions, they thrive more, reaching higher levels of well-being, creativity, and connection than less sensitive people ever do. The sensitivity itself is neutral. It's an amplifier. It turns up the volume on whatever environment surrounds it. And some of this sensitivity, Belsky found, appears to be set before birth. But prenatal stress is only one piece of this. There is another layer, and it reaches even further back. Researchers studying what is called intergenerational trauma have found evidence that the psychological wounds of one generation can leave biological traces in the next. Studies of the children of Holocaust survivors found that they showed elevated stress hormones and altered stress responses even without having experienced trauma themselves. A 2018 study led by Rachel Yehuda at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai found specific epigenetic changes in the genes regulating stress in both Holocaust survivors and their children, changes that appeared to have been transmitted biologically across the generation. Your grandmother's fear may be living in your body right now, not as a memory, as a biological setting. This is where the science becomes genuinely vertiginous. Because if the emotional environment of your mother's pregnancy shaped your nervous system, and if the trauma of your grandparents shaped your mother's biology, and if your great-grandparents' experiences shaped theirs, then what you call your personality, your baseline anxiety level, your capacity for trust, your instinct to approach or avoid, your tendency to see the world as safe or as threatening, is not purely your own. It is the accumulated biological inheritance of people you may never have met, encoding in your cells responses to experiences you never had. This doesn't mean you're trapped. The science that reveals how deeply these patterns are set is the same science that reveals how responsive they are to change. Epigenetic marks are not permanent. They can be modified. Relationships, environments, therapy, even sustained meditation have been shown to produce measurable changes in gene expression. The nervous system that was calibrated for danger can learn, slowly and with effort, that safety is real. But here is the part that stays with you. The version of you that shows up in a difficult conversation. The version that reacts before thinking, that tightens or shuts down or reaches out or runs. That version was being shaped long before you existed, long before you had language to describe yourself, long before you had a choice in any of it. Psychiatrist Dan Siegel, who has spent decades studying how relationships shape the brain, puts it simply. The mind, he says, is not just in the head. It is relational, embodied, and extended across time. You didn't arrive as a blank slate. You arrived as a living summary of everything your lineage survived. And here is the strange, quietly humbling thing about knowing that. The parts of yourself you have always found most difficult, the anxiety that arrives uninvited, the guardedness that closes off before you decide to close, the hunger for reassurance that embarrasses you. These are not character flaws. They are not failures of will or weakness of character. They are biological inheritances. Adaptations, built into you by people who needed them, passed down to you whether you needed them or not. You didn't choose them, and knowing that changes how you hold them. Right now, the version of you reading this is doing exactly what your nervous system was calibrated to do: scanning, interpreting, deciding whether what you've just learned is a threat or a relief, whether it makes you feel more trapped or more free. That reaction, the one happening in your body right now, was decided before you were born. What you do with it is the first thing that was ever entirely yours.